So this course is about HTML from scratch. Now, our main focus, or my main focus, is to teach people how to use HTML as an expert from a complete beginner standpoint. No skipping ahead, just everything is in-depth, comprehensive videos. So we cover all of the theory behind HTML, as well as all of the real-world applications and how to use it. So if you're thinking if this course is for you, it's made for complete beginners. You need to know nothing about coding, web development. You can have zero experience and come out of this course an expert. So if you maybe took some HTML and you know already the basics and you want to maybe expand your knowledge or sharpen a skill, this course is also for you because everything is very organized and laid out, and you can just go and look over the video that you want to maybe improve a weak point, watch it, and improve your skills. So this course is really for all levels of HTML. So why this course? Now, firstly, we offer lots of projects to test your knowledge. So instead of maybe speeding through the course in 1 hour, then forgetting it a week later, we offer lots of projects that you can do in your own time, or actually part of the course. You can do these projects, replicate these websites, and really hammer home that knowledge and really stick it in your head. On top of that, we have many quizzes and exams. So at the end of each chapter, like I said, there is a basic project that you have to do, but there is also a quiz. Now, this is usually 5 to 7 questions, and it really is just to test the main points that you watched in the chapter so that you can really get that knowledge. So on top of that, we have very, very short videos that are also engaging. We try to not, drag them on for minutes and minutes and minutes. We try to keep them very short, yet very concise and have lots of information. So if you're wondering what are you going to get out of this course, firstly, you're going to know fluently understanding and writing HTML code. From scratch, you can be a complete expert. You'll know what HTML is and how to use it to create websites, how to actually use it in the real world. On top of that, you will have a solid foundation to continue learning your web development. Since HTML is really the basis of creating a website, with this information, you will have a solid foundation in HTML and you can continue to go and maybe become a web developer. So this will give you the foundation you need to become a web developer in a short amount of time. So let's get started. Hi, welcome back. So in this video, I'm going to be giving a quick and comprehensive introduction to what we're going to be covering in this course and what you're going to expect to see throughout this course. So in this course, first of all of these videos are going to be very bite-sized, but also very informative. The maximum length of one of these videos is around 6 minutes, and usually most of our videos are 3 to 4 minutes. On top of that, throughout the course, quizzes and projects are sprinkled all throughout each section to really help you cement the knowledge you learn. On top of that, attached with most lectures are downloadable resources that you can use to your advantage. These resources will allow you to edit and play around with the code that we will be doing in the videos so that you can really understand how it works. Finally, this is made for complete beginners. So even if you know nothing about coding, this is a perfect course for you. Now, why don't we move into the actual sections that we're going to be covering? In the first section, we're going to be covering the theory behind HTML. So we're not going to be doing any actual coding, but we are going to be learning how HTML actually works and how it can be applied in the real world. So when you finish this section, you will really have a solid understanding of what HTML is and how it works. Once we finish with that, we'll actually get started on some code. So the first section will mostly be covering text, and not only the creation of text, but how to format and manipulate it. So things like size, fonts, and all sorts of things that you can do in HTML. So this is really just to give you a good introduction to what HTML is and just get a feel for it so that we can move into the more complex topics. After that, we're going to be moving into some more complex topics in HTML, however, not too complicated for the users. So this is just going to be in an optimum stage that you can learn these kinds of topics. So things such as lists, images, and links. We'll be learning all of that in this section. Once we've finished all of the foundation and fundamental topics in HTML, we'll move on to some of the more complex ones, like the ones I'm about to show you. Firstly, we'll be talking about tables. Tables is an essential topic to learn in HTML, and without it, you really can't call yourself an HTML developer. So we'll be learning the theory behind the structure of tables and how they work, as well as creating our own table and working with tables, as well as figuring out how to use them. So once we've mastered tables, we're going to move on to forms. So if you've ever seen a login form or a register form, that's the kind of forms we're going to be covering. By the end of this section, you'll be able to fully comprehend and create tables and forms from scratch. So these two complex topics are very, very in-depth, and we're really going to spend time on them so you can understand them. So like I said, you'll be able to create a form of any choice that you want and really comprehend how it works and how everything works together. As well as that, at the very end of the section, we are going to be giving a final project, which is going to be using all of the skills and techniques we've learned throughout the course. Like I said, this will really help you retain that information and know how to use it in the real world. For example, if I didn't actually attach these projects and quizzes and practicals, you might go in and be a first timer, even though you know exactly what to do with HTML. This way, you'll know exactly how to use it in the real world, what to use, what not to use, and you'll be able to jump right into your next stage of web development learning. So, let's get started. In this video, I'm going to be giving you a quick introduction to what is HTML. So HTML actually stands for Hypertext Markup Language. Now, HTML is used to tell the browser or the computer what information to display on the website. So anything like text, buttons, forms, everything like that is used and displayed using HTML. Many web developers and designers consider HTML to be the backbone of creating a website because mainly it's used again to create text fields, but there's no actual styling. So all of the bare bones of the website is made using HTML. So HTML is mainly used in web development and design, and also creating web applications. Outside of websites, HTML is not very used. Now, one thing I'd like to say is if you think HTML is a programming language, it's not. Now, it's kind of hard to explain, but here's why. HTML is a markup language. Here's the difference. A programming language will tell a computer a set of actions to do to come out with a result. So for example, if you're programming in C++, you would write a few lines of code which would tell the computer some actions and output a result. Whereas a markup language just tells the computer what to display and it doesn't actually give any actions. So if you put some text in an HTML file, it will display that text. If you put it in a C++ file, it will come out with a syntax error. So that's really it for HTML, and why don't we start moving on now? So now I'm going to be giving an introduction onto how HTML actually works and how most of HTML is structured. So the first thing I'd like to talk about is tags. Now, tags are the way to tell a website how to style a text or what to create. So tags are mainly used to either create and style text, we'll get into, again, the tags later, or to create things such as tables, forms, everything like that. Now, they can also be used to tell all of the hidden data of the website or the text. So, for example, when a link tag is clicked, where you will be sent when you click that link tag. So here's an example of how tags work. So at the beginning, now there's the opening tag. Between two angular brackets, there is the indicating text that tells the website what the tag is. Now there's two tags for normal tags. We'll get into self-closing tags later. There is the opening tag and the closing tag. The closing tag is at the end where you want the tag to end or where you want the styling or creation to end. So you put this at the end, and it's the exact same as the opening tag, except it begins with a slash. So in between these two tags, all of your text or anything that you want to style or create is put in between it. Again, we'll get more into how tags work, how to use them, and then we'll actually start using them later. So there is actually another kind of tag that doesn't require a closing tag. This is called a self-closing tag. So this is usually used to create things that require an input, so text fields, etc., things like that. Now, here in the example above, you don't really have to know what this does, but this creates an email form, the place where you can input your email. We'll get more into, again, forms in the form section. But see, it does not require a closing tag, yet it still creates a email box, and it doesn't even require anything in between. So this only requires one tag. As you can see, there's no closing tag, and there's some attributes in the middle that tell the email tag what to do. So here's a little example of how self-closing tags or normal tags appear on the website. So here you go. Here you can see this is some text, and that's the text that's going to be displayed. But you can see that it's bolded. Now, why is this? It's because in between the text or outside of the text, there are two normal tags, or actually one normal tag that tells it to actually make the text bold. So strong is the bolding tag. We'll get more into, strong, bolding, everything like that later. But when you put this is some text in between two strong tags, it tells the website to bold anything that is in between those two tags. So that's why this is some text is bolded, is because it's in between those two tags. So let's move on to attributes. So you saw this example in the input section. You saw that there's a little string of text inside the tag. So what attributes do, it's certain phrases that can give the tag more meaning or instruction. So there are hundreds of attributes that you can use specifically for each tag, or you can use it in general. So here's an example of an attribute. Now you can see that there is an A tag, which is a link tag. Now what does this do? It will send the user, whenever he clicks on click here to go to Google, that text, the A tag tells the website to make anything in between those two A tags the link. So click here to go to Google, because it's in between those two A tags, are now a link tag. But when you click on it, it won't send you anywhere. Now, how do you fix that? With the href attribute. Again, we'll get into it later. You don't really have to know what this does, but attributes are always placed inside the first opening tag. And what they do is give it more instruction. So the href tag tells the user or tells the website where to send the user when he clicks on that text. So now, instead of just sending him to a random website, when he clicks, the href tag or the href attribute will tell the website to send the user to google.com. So that's really attributes, and that's really how HTML works. Again, we'll get more into how to use it, and we'll just start using it more later on. But before we actually start doing some real work, you need to have a basic theory, basic understanding of how it works. So today we're going to be talking about the different types of tags, which are inline and block level tags. So firstly, tags in HTML can be sorted into two separate groups, inline tags and block level tags. So what are they? Firstly, block level tags are tags that will take up their own section when used. So let me give you an example. You can see on the right side of this slide, we have two tags, and inside it is I am a block level tag. Now this P is the paragraph tag. So you can see that there's two different lines. Now if you look right below the code in the example, each separate line of text takes up its own line instead of being put on the same line. That is what a block level tag is. Now block level tags are usually used in the creation of something. So the creation of text, the creation of tables, anything that has to do with creating something is usually a block level tag. So next, why don't we cover inline tags? Now inline tags are tags that can be applied to text or anything without having to move something to a new line. So let's just look at the example here. All of this text is inside a paragraph tag, which is a block level tag. But then you can see this tag is an inline tag, is inside a strong tag or a bolding tag. Now this is an example of an inline tag. So if you look at the example, you can see that this tag is an inline tag, has not been moved to a new line, but instead stays inside the same line as the paragraph tag. And that's a perfect example of what an inline tag does, is it can be applied. It's a style or a tag that can be applied, but it does not move the text or the item that the tag is inside to a new line. So usually inline tags are used for things such as styling or formatting text instead of the creation of things. So just a quick review, block level tags move things or move text or items or anything to a new line or take up their own section, while inline tags can be applied inline or in the same line as everything else. Hi, welcome back. So today we're going to be talking about the HTML boilerplate. Now, there's going to be a lot in this certain course or this tutorial, so you do not need to memorize it. I'm just telling you that now. You don't need to go over it constantly. Just watch it. You just need to understand how it works, and then you will be done. So firstly, the boilerplate is a set of tags that is used to define the structure of an HTML document. So if you look at the example here, there's a lot of separate tags and there's a lot of different sections that will contain different parts of the web page. So why don't we go over those different parts? Now the first one is the doctype HTML section. This is a self-closing tag and it's just the first line of the web page or of the file. Now what this does is it tells the web browser that this file is an HTML document. So whenever you open a web page, doctype HTML tells the web browser, okay, this file is an HTML document, so that it can open it accordingly. So the next section is the HTML section. The opening tag is always right after the doctype tag, and the closing tag is the last tag of your web page. So this contains everything in the website. This contains all of the other boilerplate tags except doctype. It contains hidden data, text, visible data. Everything that has to do with the website goes inside the HTML tag. So more specifically is the header tag. So again, this goes directly after the opening HTML tag. And what this does is it contains all of the hidden data of your website. So here's where you would put things like links or connecting documents, and it will not be seen on the web page if you put it inside this section. Now, more specifically, inside of the header section is the title section. Now, here is where the title of the web page that you will see in your web browser goes. So if you look at the example, I just put this is the title inside the title tag. And if you look at the example below in my browser, it says this is the title. So whatever you put here will be the title of your web page. Now next is the body section. So this contains everything that is visible on your website. So anything that you want on the web page will go inside the body tag. So firstly, the last thing I'd like to cover is specificity. Now, this may not make too much sense to you, but we'll get more experience with it over time and you'll start to understand it more. So you saw that the HTML tag or the HTML section contains everything inside the website, but then the body section contains only the visible data. So you're probably thinking, why don't I just put everything about the website inside the HTML tag, but then there's nothing inside the body tag? Well, this is because of specificity. Now, if you actually look at the boilerplate, the HTML tag contains all of these sections inside it as well. So if you look at it, the HTML tag also contains the body tag and the header tag. So what it's trying to say is that the header and all of these different sections are actually subsets or a part of the HTML tag. So the HTML tag contains everything, yes, but more specifically, the body tag will contain everything that is visible on the website. So think of it this way. The HTML tag is a box, and this box has blue and red marbles. Now, the box is the HTML tag, but the header tag is the blue marbles, and the body tag is the red marbles. So yes, the box contains all of the marbles, but then more specifically, these specific tags contain different parts of the marbles, different colors of marbles inside the box. So like I said, I know this is a little bit of a hard concept to get your head around, but we'll get more experience with it as we move on through the course. Hi, welcome back. So today we're going to be setting up our first HTML document and just using our text editor, getting used to it so that we can start making our documents and learning how to use HTML. So this is just going to be a really quick video. I just want to go over some quick shortcuts and just how to use Sublime Text. So if you haven't downloaded already, a few lectures back in this course, there is an article giving you the link, where to download it, everything like that, just how to download it, how to open files. But now we're just going to be going over it a little bit more in depth. So if you haven't downloaded it already, please go a few lectures back to that article and download it so that you can start using it. So the first thing we want to do is create a new file. So I have Sublime Text open. You want to go ahead and open this up. Now the first thing you want to do is create a file. So all you have to do is do Control and N, and it will create a new file here. Now we want to save this as an HTML document before you do anything, otherwise none of these shortcuts will work. So what you want to do is go Control S, and here it will prompt you up your file save in your Windows Explorer. So you can name it anything you want. I'm just going to name it test, and then always add .html. If you do not add the file extension, none of these will work. You always have to add the file extension, otherwise your document just won't work. So always add the file extension after your name. Once you do that, just click save, and there you go. Now you have your document set up. So the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to show you how to create a boilerplate really quickly. So like I said, you don't need to memorize this in the boilerplate video, and this is why. So what you want to do is type out HTML in words, then click tab. This will create a boilerplate for you automatically and set up everything ready to use. So there you go. Now you have your boilerplate set up, and now I'm just going to teach you another trick that you can use. So this is called a comment, and a comment in HTML basically renders the code useless. So if you want to make a little note to yourself, or if you're making let's say a tutorial code and you want to indicate what this does, that's how you make a comment. So in a new line, I'm just going to type some random text here. I'm just going to type hello 2 times, and you can click on any points in this line, hold Control down and click slash. It will comment out this text. So these are the 2 commenting notations. Like I said, you don't need to know them because of this shortcut. So there you go. That's a really cool way to comment out things. But one last thing I want to show you is how to select multiple lines and write on multiple lines at the same time. So especially if you want to add a class or add a new tag to something, but you don't want to do it for like 5 or 6 different lines, all you have to do is hold Control down, hover over the line and click. make sure you're holding control down for every single one. Once you have all of the tags or all of the lines that you want selected, let go. Now if I type something, you can see that it types on every single line. So this is a very useful trick, and again, if you just want to go out of it, you can click anywhere. So again, that's a very useful trick, and that's all we have for this video. Very simple. We just need to know the basics of how to use our text editor. Hi, welcome back. So today we're going to be looking at some tags that we can use, and we're going to start using tags and actually creating some, documents that look okay. So we're going to start with header tags. Now, header tags are basically tags that are used to make text look like a header. So big font, it's bold, just everything, all the qualities that make it look like a header. So they come all the way from header 1, which is the biggest and the boldest, down to header 6. And they're written in the form H and then the number. So H1 or header 1 would be H1, header 5 would be H5, and so on. Now the way you would write this, just like any other tag, is in angular brackets, H1, the text, and then your closing tag. So let me just show you what I mean. And actually a really cool trick in Sublime is if you type H1, and if you click tab, it will actually create the text, or it will create the tags for you. So you can do this with any tag you want. Just type out the text and click tab, and it will create the two tags for you instead of having to type it out every time. So there you go. We have our H1 tag. Now let's just type text, and there you go. This is our H1. Let's go ahead and save that with Control S. But now I want to show you how it looks compared to just normal text. So I'm going to create some text here, and then I'm going to save that again. Now if I go ahead and refresh the page, you can see our H1 text. It looks way bigger and bolder than just the normal text here. So this is what the H1 tag will do. But this isn't the only header tag we have. It goes all the way from H1 down to H6, like I said before. So if I actually show you H3, and I click tab, and then I click text, write some text again, and then save that. If we go ahead and refresh, you can see this is also a header tag, but this is smaller because this is header 3. So you can just experiment around with this. I have attached a resource here with all of the tags, and you can just play around with it and see how the tags work. I highly recommend that you download this and just see how all the tags work. Again, there is a project at the end of each section where you will be using all of these skills. So just go ahead, download this, and play around with it. But the next thing I want to cover is the paragraph tag. Now, you saw this briefly, but let me go ahead and explain it. So the paragraph tag doesn't really have any special, no text sizing, no bolding, but what it does do is move inline text to a new line. So I'm just going to say here sentence 1 and sentence 2. So let's say I want sentence 2 on a new line. Now if I write sentence 1 and sentence 2, and you can see in the text editor they're on new lines. But if I save this and I refresh here, they actually appear on the same line. That's because any text that's written just directly into HTML will automatically be inline. So how do we actually get this to move to a new line? Well, I'm glad you asked. It's with the paragraph tag. So let's just move this back up to show you how it works. If we put a paragraph tag around sentence 2, what it will do is move everything inside this paragraph tag to a new line. Again, paragraph tag. It's a block level element, so anything inside the tag will move to its own section. Now if we refresh, you can see it's moved to a new section. This goes the same with headers. Headers are automatically block level elements, so anything you put inside a header will actually move into its own section. So that's really it for these text creation tags. I highly recommend you go and download this and play around with it because this is really important and it's basically the basis of HTML. You need to know this off the back of your hand. It's not really hard to know. You just need to play around with it and get a feel for it. Hi, welcome back. So today we're going to be covering some more tags, and more specifically we're going to be covering text styling tags. So things like bolding, underlining, and italicizing. So all of these tags are inline, so they will not move anything to a new section, so you can use them inside of other tags, which is what we're going to be covering in this video. So let me go ahead and show you the 3 tags. So I already have some apparatus set up here. It's already opened in Chrome, you can see, but I'm just going to show you how these look in the browser. So the bolding tag is strong. Now, if you just go ahead and type strong, and I know you might think it's B, but it's not. But so yeah, it is strong. Now, if I go ahead and click / actually on the closing tag, it will give you the closing tag automatically. That's just another cool trick. But if I go ahead and save and open it, you can see that bold is now bolded. because it is inside these strong tags. So now let's cover underlining tags. So underlining is a little bit more simple, and so is italicizing, and it's just a simple U. So if you go ahead and wrap the underlined word inside the U tag, it will appear underlined. There you go. So now if I go back into my Sublime text, what I'm going to do now is show you the italicizing tag. So again, much simpler than the bolding tag. It's just I. There you go. Very easy. That's all you have to know for text formatting. It's very easy, the 3 tags, but you need to know these by heart. So if I go ahead and refresh now, you can see it's italicized. Now here's some more complicated apparatus. What if you want to underline something that's inside of a paragraph tag, or it's inside of a header tag, or inside of a link tag? Well, it's very easy actually. You just need to get your head around the concepts. So firstly, let me show you if you want to wrap something more specifically inside the paragraph tag. Not the whole thing. I'll show you that later. What you want to do is simply, just like before, put the tag that you want around what you want. And there you go. You can see if I want underlined, if I want this to be underlined, I just put it inside an underlining tag. And it is still inside the paragraph tag. So let me just explain this to you. All of this text is inside the paragraph tag, but more specifically, underlined is going to be underlined because it's inside a underlining tag. So if I go ahead and save this and refresh it, you can see this is underlined just like before. Now, what if you want to wrap the entire tag in an italicizing tag, just like here? Now, this is a little bit more complicated, a little bit harder to get your head wrapped around, but what you want to do is the text creation tag will always come first, and then more specifically, the styling tag. So what you want to do is, if I want to make this italicized, inside of the paragraph tag, and at the end of the text, I'm going to put my italicizing tag. And it's never supposed to be the other way around. If you do that, it'll cause problems for you in the future. So always make sure that the text creation tag or the block level tag is always on the outside. Now, if I save this and I go ahead and refresh, you can see this is all italicized. So there you go. Very easy. Just make sure you don't get the two mixed up, and your text creation tag is always on the outside. Hi, welcome back. So here is our first project of the section, and I hope you did well on the quiz in the previous lecture. So I'm just going to explain how these projects will work. What you're going to have to do is replicate a website. So I made this website here just a few minutes ago, and what I want you to do is replicate it and code it from scratch. Now, all of the skills you have learned in this, section, and you have to use your brain a little bit to underline and italicize this text. It's not that hard, but once you get your head around it, you just need to think of wrapping things in other tags. So here you go. This is what you're going to have to replicate. And one note, I know this says some bolded text and it doesn't actually bold anything, but all I want you to do is wrap the word bolded in a bolding tag, just for practice and just wrapping things in tag. So once you're done, all you're going to do is just click on the dashboard, go to this lecture and download the solution file. And then you can compare my code to yours. There's comments, there's explanations, things to help you out with parts that you're stuck on. So go ahead, download that, compare your code. And overall, just have fun with HTML. Try coding some really cool websites, play around with it. And once you've done that, you can move on to the more advanced stuff in the next section. So, good luck. Hi, welcome back. So today we're going to be covering some more advanced tags, and we're going to be moving into some more tags that you can use in your HTML documents. So the first tag I want to talk about is the image tag, or IMG tag. This is used to insert images into your document. So there's actually two ways you can do this. You can do this from an actual file or from an online URL. So first, I'd like to teach you about the actual tag. Now, we're going to be using our first attributes inside our tags, so you can get to work around with those. But why don't we get into it? So the tag is actually called IMG. So if you type out IMG, then hit tab, it will give you your IMG tag, or your image tag. Now, let me go ahead and dissect this for you. So firstly, it is a self-closing tag, so you will not need any closing tag. And on top of that, it actually is an inline tag. So if you have multiple image tags, they will appear on the same line, and I'll teach you how to move it into its own section later. But why don't we actually cover what this src is? So this is our attribute here, and this is the sort of technique or format that all of our attributes follow. It's the text equals and then 2 quotation marks for the value. So what source actually does is to tell the image tag where to refer to get the image to insert. So firstly, let's suppose that we want to insert an image from a folder or from an actual file into our document. So first thing you need to make sure is that your image and your HTML document are in the same directory, because it's a little bit advanced to move into different directories. So you're going to want to make sure that your image and your HTML document are in the same directory. Next thing you want to do is copy the name exactly with the file extension. So example_image.jpg. Then you're just going to put that into your file here, .jpg, and save it. Now, if we go ahead and refresh our page, you can see that the image comes up here. So that's great, but what if we want to do it from an actual URL? So I have a URL here, and you need to make sure that this URL actually links to a standalone image and not a web page. So it's the exact same technique, except you're going to replace this with the actual URL and make sure you have the HTTP in there, so otherwise it won't work. So just copy the URL directly and paste it in. I'm going to go ahead and click save and refresh, and you can see we have that image here directly pulled from the website. But what if we want to move this to a new line? So it's actually very easy. In the text creation video, I said that p tags or paragraph tags are used to move things to their own section. So what you're going to do is actually just put a paragraph tag around this image. And if you go ahead and save, again, the paragraph tag is around the image. And if we go ahead and refresh, you can see that our image has now moved to a new line because the paragraph tag, it's inside of the paragraph tag. You get the idea. So now we know how to insert images, but what if you want to manipulate their size or change how they look? Now, when you insert an image, it will take the dimensions directly from the file or image. But what if you want to resize it or make it bigger or smaller? Now, these are more attributes. And again, they're put inside the first tag. Very simple, width and height. Now, if I go ahead and type out width, it'll say attribute. You just click tab and it'll give you the attribute there. So you can set this in the form of pixels. Now, you're going to need to get used to the pixel scale because you will use it a lot. So let's say we want to set it to 150 pixels. What you're going to do is type out 150, then px, and you're going to click save. And if I refresh, you can see that we've actually changed the width of this image here. You're going to need to get used to the scale and how it works and looks so that you can actually start resizing stuff. But you can experiment with this. You can experiment with this as much as you want. But what if you want to change the height? It's almost the exact same. You just type out height and click tab. And there you go. It'll give you your height attribute. Again, this is in pixels. So if I set it to 150 pixels and I click save and I refresh, you can see that the height has changed. And I know it looks a little bit blurry, but you need to play with this to the point where it is resized correctly. So that's really it. These attributes you're going to need to know. Again, this is our first example of attributes. Go ahead, play with this, experiment with it. But again, these are just some examples of attributes. This is the image tag and how to move it into its own section. So today we're going to be covering link tags. Now, I've referenced this a lot in the past, link tags, A tags, anchor tags, but now we're going to actually learn what it is. So what is an anchor tag or a link tag? So it's pretty self-explanatory. It's a tag that sends the user somewhere or sends the user to a link when he clicks on it. So it's a link tag, basically. Now, the way to create a link tag is just by typing A. And if you hit tab, it will automatically create your tag for you, but always include this attribute. Now I'll explain what it is later, but again, the tag is just A, very simple. There is a closing tag, I'll explain why later, but here you have href. Now what is href? It's an attribute that you need the browser to know where to send the user when the link is actually clicked. So I'll just show you an example. If I type out some text here, click here because I'm going to send him to Facebook. So if I click here to go to Facebook, and I just type it out there. Now, I want to send my user to Facebook, but if I go and I refresh the page here, and when I click on it, nothing happens, right? Well, that's because you actually need to input the URL to send the user to. So what you would put here is the URL of the Facebook homepage, or any other website, any other web page that you want. Now, one thing is you have to make sure to include the full URL, http www. If you skimp, it will not work. If I put facebook.com here and I save thinking it will send my user to Facebook and I refresh, it won't work. You can see it doesn't work. And that's because HTTP is the request for the internet. Now, it's a little bit complex, but when you just type out facebook.com, it will look for a file. That's why you need HTTP and www. So let's just type that out there. There you go. That's the full URL. Now, if we refresh and I go and click on the link, it will actually send me to Facebook. So there you go. That's how to use the link tag. But what if we wanted, when you click this, it will open Facebook in a new tab and keep our web page open. Now, this is another attribute. It's very simple. In your first tag, all you're going to have to do is type out target and then click tab and it will give you your attribute. Now, target, and in target, you're going to type blank. Now, let me actually explain what target is briefly. So what target does is tells not where to send it, but how to send it. So where the user would see the web page in a new tab, in a different window. And when you put blank, it's telling the browser to send the user to a new tab. So when you click on it now, you can see it opens Facebook in a new tab. So that's really it for anchor tags, link tags. It's very simple, but we're going to be using it a lot. So make sure you know this fluently and you know how to use it. Hi, welcome back. So I hope you enjoyed that quiz and I hope you did really well on it. So now we're going to move on to another project. So this is going to be covering all of the skills that you have learned in this section, except divs and spans, obviously, because you can't see it. But this is the website. So the image is for download. So you're going to have to download it. Just click on the little icon, maybe in the top left, top right, wherever it is, and download this image. Really, you can use whatever image you want, but this is just to prove that you can use images. So this is a header. This is a H1. This is an H4. And this is a link tag, and then you have some other stuff here, and this is just some bolded text. So there you go. This is what you're going to have to replicate. When you're done, just go ahead, download the solution, check your code, improve it, and yeah, that's really it, and good luck. Hi, welcome back. So today we're going to be moving on in HTML and we're going to be covering tables. So this may seem a little bit difficult or daunting at first, but once you get to know it, it becomes very easy. So why don't we go ahead and cover the structure, and once we cover the theory, you will be able to move on and create our own tables. So let's get started. Firstly, to create a table, you're going to need to use the table tag. So basically all you do, just type out table, get this tag, and then everything to do with the table will go inside the table tag. On top of that, all of your styles or everything, all of the attributes you want to put for the table, as usual, will go inside the first table tag. One very important attribute you need to know, these two are not very important. We covered this previously, but this is very, very important. So let me show you what this does and what will happen without it. So this is basically what creates this border around the table. Now, if I actually erase this, I'll show you what happens. If I go ahead and erase this, I'm just going to go ahead and erase that. You can see that the border will actually disappear. So you can't see anything, but it is still arranged in a table, but there's no border. So it kind of makes everything look weird. So you need to have this style, border equals 1 or border equals 2, depending on how thick you want it. You just need to have this to actually create the border for the table. So let's go ahead and refresh and move on now. So firstly, there are two main sections of the table, the table header and the table body. So they do not make any visual difference. But what they do is they identify the different parts so that when the website looks at it, it will be able to differentiate between the header row and the body row. And it makes things so much easier in the future when you start using more code. So basically, your header row or the first row, titles, things like that would go inside this t-head tag. So you're just going to create a t-head tag and don't do anything with it yet. Again, I'm just explaining the theory, but we also have the table body or the t-body tag. So the t-body, just like the t-head, is creating the body of the table. So this is where all of the actual information would go. So once you have these three different sections set up, the table tag, and then inside of that, you'd have the t-head and t-body tags. Now you can actually get into making the core of the table. So there are two main tags I'd like to cover, tr and td. TR is table row. Every time you create a new table row tag, it will create a new row inside your, table. So for example, if you have one table row and it has some items in it, if you create another table row tag, everything inside of that will appear on a new row. So every time you use a TR tag, it will create a brand new row. So the next thing I'd like to cover is inside the table row, you would have TDs or table items. Now I know it sounds kind of weird, TD, table item, but you just have to know this to be able to create the table. So TD and the table items is the items that go inside the row or the different cells. So for each TD has its own section inside the row. You have to make sure that it's inside the row. So there you go. You can put basically anything inside of a TD. See here, I put a link, but you can also put images, styling, anything you basically want, you can put it inside a TD. So let me just give you a little visual representation so you can understand how all of this translates onto the actual website. So here you go. I have my T head, and then I have one row with 3 items inside it. One of them saying header 1, header 2, and header 3. So let's go ahead, and if I look here, I have one table row, it's in the header row, and then I have 3 TDs, header 1, header 2, and header 3 inside of that one row. So this just gives you a little idea on how this translates into the real world. So now that you know about all of the tags and how they work, I want to actually tell you how you can place text directly under a certain header. So you can see here that it says header 1, this is stored directly under header 1. So how do you do that? Now, it's really basic math. All you have to do is know the number or the sequence in which the TDs come. So let's say we have header 1, header 2, and header 3 here. And I want this to come under header 2. Now, if you haven't already figured it out yet, the TD of the information needs to be the same number as the header 2. So if you look at the header row, actually, let's just change this to age, for example. So I'm just going to go ahead and change this to age. And I'm just going to go ahead and change this to age. So you can see that the TD saying age is the second item inside the header row. So if we go ahead and actually refresh now, you can see that it says age here. So it's the second table item. So to place the ages of the different rows, you would have to make the age or the TD that says the age the second item. So you can see here that this is the second item of the row, 1, 2, but then this is also the second item of the row. So this is the row that goes directly below the header. And you can see that it is the second table item. And you can do this for every single one as well. So for example, it says here header 1, it's the first TD. So this would be the first TD so that it can be placed under header 1. Now I know it's a little bit of a hard concept to get your head around, but you'll get very used to it very quickly. So that's really it for tables. You're really going to have to know this structure by heart to be able to create tables from scratch. Hi, welcome back. So today, now that we know the theory behind the actual creation of tables, we are going to learn how to create a table, or you are going to be creating a table from scratch. So let's get started. Firstly, what we're going to do is create our table tag. You know how to do that. You type out the tag, click tab, and it'll give you the tag. So there you go. Now we have our table tag set up. So first, let's start off with the table header. So let's just go ahead and create the T head. And now that we have our table header, why don't we go ahead and create our header row? So I'm going to do it exactly like you saw in this document over here, which is header 1, header 2, header 3. I know it says age. That was from the previous video that I did, but that doesn't matter. So what we're going to do now is create a new table row inside of the header. So let's make a new line and type out TR, click tab, and then there you go. Now we have our table row. So now that we've done that, why don't we go ahead and start creating our header items. So let's create 3 new TDs. Now, if you don't know this trick already, I'm going to make 3 lines. If you actually hold Control down, you can click, let me go to the start. I can click down and it will actually, you can see I can select multiple lines at one time. And this really saves a lot of time. So I'm just going to type TD and there you go. And I'm going to type out header. And by the way, when you're done, you can just click off. So now what I'm going to do is go 1, 2, let me erase that, and of course 3. So now, let me just make some lines, separate everything, make it look a little bit presentable. So now you can see that we actually have 3 TDs or 3 cells inside the header row. So if we go ahead and refresh, you can see I have 3 headers, and I know they look inline and whatever, but that's because we don't have our border yet. But this just shows that it does actually work. So, 1 row, header 1, header 2, header 3, 3 table items. So now we have our header row. Let's go ahead and create our body. So now that we're done with T-head, we're going to make sure it's closed off and then type out T-body. T-body. Click tab, and there you go. Now we have our body. So just like before, we're going to create 1 more row and then 3 items in it because, we want everything to be proportionate, 3 items in each row. So what you're going to do is I'm going to make, again, a new line, and I'm going to type out TR, and there you go. So now I'm going to do that little trick again, make 3 lines, go to the start, hold Control down, go tab, and then make 3 TDs. And instead of header, I'm going to put item just so you can see the difference. So I'm going to go 1, I'm going to go 2, and I'm going to go 3. So now we have 3 items, 3 headers. So if I'm going a little bit too fast, you can always just play back and see what's going on. But you can see, I just wanted to show you something. Like I said in the previous video, you have to kind of correspond the headers with the items in each row. So for example, if the header 1 was the first TD, you have to make everything that you want under header 1 the first TD in every row. So I'm just going to go ahead and show you now. Refresh. You can see it works. Item 1, item 2, and item 3, and it's all indented properly. So you can see header 1 is the first TD, item 1 is the first TD, item 2 second, header 2 second, and then so on and so on. So this may get a little bit complicated over time, but always just look over and sort of see which TD is which so you can really organize everything properly. So now that we have the actual structure of the table set up, now why don't we go ahead and give it a border. And then once we're done that, it's basically finished. We don't really have to do anything more. So, like we said, go into the first table tag and then border equals 1. Go ahead and save that, and you can see now that we have our stuff set up. So it all looks really nice and neat. Now there's also width and height, but I'm not really going to show that because it's pretty self-explanatory and I explained it already. So there you go. That's really it. And we have our table here. Hi, welcome back. So we have come to yet another project, and I know the tables section was short, but that's because there is really so little to cover, and tables is such a basic part of HTML that we didn't really need much to cover. So I'm just going to go ahead and run you through. Like I said, this is just like any other project. You can download the solution, look over your code, revise, just work with it. So firstly, the width and the height is both 150 pixels, and the header row or anything inside the T head will never be affected. So just keep that in mind. Now, on top of that, these 3 ages or these 3 TDs with the ages are actually italicized, and then football, the football TD, is underlined, is inside an underlined styling tag. So you're going to go ahead and have to replicate this. As you can see, the names are under the name, age is under the age, and hobby is under the hobby. And I told you how to do that. So you can go ahead and try that for yourself and work with the TDs, try and get this to replicate exactly. So, good luck. Hi, welcome back. So now we're going to be moving on to HTML forms. So we're done with tables, we're done with all the basic stuff. Now we're going to dive into probably the most complex part of this course, which is forms. So the reason I put this last is because everything you need to know, you need to have a lot of knowledge of HTML to be able to build up to this point. So this section may be a little bit challenging, but it's okay because we're going to break it up into small pieces so that you can understand everything. So HTML forms is probably one of the most essential features, and they're used to create things like logins, signups, registers, surveys, everything to do with that. It is created using HTML forms. So in this video, I'm just going to be going over the very basic structure and theory behind how a form works. And this is because I really want you to understand how it's structured, so you don't just go into creating forms not knowing anything. So if you actually know this, you can understand the different parts and really comprehend what the form means. So firstly, to create the form, you use the form tag. So just spelled out form, and then this will contain everything else about the form. So it's just form form tag, and whenever you're starting a new form, you use this tag. Right, next we have two more things, inputs and labels. Now, inputs are used to create the different fields or actually parts of the form. So if you look at like a login form, the email and password box are created using inputs or HTML inputs. So these have many different attributes, types, but we'll really go in depth into how an input works because it's a big piece of forms and it needs its own separate video. So that's it for inputs. And then next we have a label. So you can see here, the label is actually wrapped inside, or it wraps around the input. Now we'll go more into actually how to use labels later, but the label basically creates the text that is put right next to the form. So if you have an email box or like a box with email and you can type your email in, this label will tell the website what text to put next to the box. So it would appear like this. This little input here would appear like this. It would appear email, the email box, and then you'd have the text saying email right next to it. So again, this is just a very basic form, but I really want you to understand how this works. So this is downloadable. I uploaded this. You can download the file and just open it up in your browser and then see how everything works. You can really understand the structure of how the form works. And then once you get the whole hang of it and get the idea of a structure, we can move on to actually going more in depth into the complex parts of a form and then actually making the form. Hi, welcome back. So today we're going to be covering the different types of inputs that you can use in your HTML form. Now, just to be clear, there are many different inputs, but these are just going to be the main ones that you're going to be using consistently throughout not only this section of the series, but also just in general when you're using HTML. So we're going to actually cover, type, the attributes and everything, how an input works later. But for now, I'm just going to tell you the different types. And you do need to know these off by heart because you're going to be using these consistently throughout your, careers in HTML. So the first type I'd like to point out is the email or the email input. And it looks like this, and it looks like they all look the same, but the main difference is if I just type out anything here, you can see when I click submit, it actually asks me for an @ So it asks you for the standard form of an email. You can see it's incomplete. So you see you have to enter, there you go. So you see now that little error is gone there, but you can see that it asks for the standard email form. So the next type I'd like to cover is the password. So it's just password. And what this does is actually block out your characters whenever you input it in a password field. So you can see there, whenever I input characters are all blocked out. So there you go. That's the password field. And then next you have the generic text field. So no inputs, no special restrictions. It's just standard. Everything's the same. This is just a generic text box. So after the text, it's spelled out text, by the way, you have the radio inputs. So you can see here that it creates this little circular button, and you've seen these radio buttons before, especially on surveys, which we're going to be using them in the future. But the main difference is between a checkbox is that this is not untickable. And that's because we don't have multiple radio buttons yet, which we're going to be learning how to do in the future, by the way. But you can see this is not untickable. But the next one I'd like to cover, and by the way, it's just radio, this input, is the checkbox input, which is just spelled out checkbox. So this is the main difference, is that this is tickable and untickable. So you can see there, you can tick it, you can untick it. It's just a regular checkbox. And then the final one I'd like to cover is submit. So there you go. It just creates a submit button. You can also use the button feature, by the way. Now, I didn't actually say this tag before, and I'm just going to show you here. What I can do instead of this input is just type out button or use a button tag, which I haven't covered, but this is not really widely used. You can just create a button and then type out submit. And if I go ahead and save that, you can see I have another submit button, and they're almost identical. They do exactly the same thing, especially because it's still in the form. So you can use either one. I would use the actual button, but if you just want a submit, just use this input. It makes things a lot simpler. So there you go. Those are the different types of inputs that you can use in HTML. In the next video, we're going to be covering how to actually use and work with an input. Hi, welcome back. So now that we looked at the different types of inputs, why don't we actually look at how to create and use inputs? So you saw previously that there's many attributes that go into creating an input. So I'm going to be going over all of those, and I'm also going to be going over the way to properly create radio buttons, because there's a special way to do it and it's a little bit complicated. So why don't we move into it? So you can see here that there's many different attributes, like I said before. So why don't we go ahead and explain them? So the first one is the type. So you saw in the previous video the different types of inputs, and there are many, many different types. But this is where you actually identify what type the input is. So here, between these two quotations, you would put the type. Email, password, radio, checkbox. Whatever the type of the input is, you would put it here. So because this is email, I put email. And then you can see here that this is actually an email thing, because when I hover over it, you would see that it says, please include an @ in the email. All of the standard email things. So next we have the name. So the name is used to sort of identify the field in a database. So for example, if a user inputs his email in the database, when he clicks submit in the database, his email would be stored under the name email box, because the name is email box. So you would see that it would be email box and then his email. So this is used just to identify the email or the different information in the database and differentiate between it. Next, we have the placeholder. So this is probably a very, very important in terms of aesthetics here, because it inputs the gray text in the box before you input any text. So you can see here it says email here. When I input the text, it goes away. But here is where you would put the text that would actually go before inputting any information. So then you have the ID. Now I'm not going to go over the main function of an ID. It's very important, but because it's just HTML that we're covering, we're not really going to cover it in much depth. But this is basically used to give the specific input, or the input that you're actually putting the ID for, a specific name. Now this doesn't have to be this name. It's just an ID for the specific input that you're using. So it's used mainly for addressing the input in other files, for styling, things like that. Now the next is the value attribute. So the value attribute, it's used to identify only multiple choice. So it's not really used for text fields such as input, email, password, text, but it's mainly used for things like radio buttons or checkboxes. So it's used to tell you in the database what the user selected based on what he chose. So, for example, when you input an email, when you check your database or when you check your information sheet, it will show his email. But what happens when you select a radio button, like this, for example? When you select this, how would you know what you selected? And that's exactly what the value is for. So you can see here, I put mail. Now we're going to get more into this later, but I put mail here. So when you actually select mail and click submit, which I didn't actually have here, but when you click submit in your database, it will say that he selected the mail because that's the value. So that's really what value does. So now that we're done with the different inputs and attributes of an input, why don't we move on to how to, make it selectable between radio buttons. So you can see here I have gender, male and female. And in the previous video, we saw that we could not deselect a radio button. But here we actually can. We can switch between radio buttons. So how do I do this? It's actually very simple. I have two inputs here, one for male and one for female. And all you have to do is just give them the same name. It's that simple. And it have to be exactly the same name, case sensitive, everything. Because if I even make one minor change here, you can see the name is different between male and female. You can see if I go ahead and refresh, I can select both of them and then I can't deselect them. So you have to make sure that the name is the same. And that's really it. The ID does not have to be the same, but you can see here that they have the same name, different values. So that's very simple. You just have to give them the same name and then there you go. And we're going to be actually creating a survey form throughout this section with a bunch of survey questions with multiple choice radio buttons. So I'm just teaching you how to do this from now so that you can become really proficient at it in the future. So that's really it on inputs and how to use it. In the next video, we're going to be actually starting to create our form and bring our skills that you just learned to life. Hi, welcome back. So now that we covered over the theory of a form, now we're going to actually start to create a form. So we're going to try and get this into a real life context. So what I'm going to do today is create a little survey with just one question to make things simpler and quick. But I'm going to leave the file for download. You can go ahead, download it, experiment, just work around with it, try and get the hang of forms. So firstly, let's just put an H1 to give it a title. So I'm just going to put an H1 there and I'm going to say, welcome to the survey. So welcome to the survey. So now that we have a title, we can actually go ahead and start creating our form. So like we said in the previous video, always start with the form tag. And now we can move on to the other stuff. So we didn't actually cover labels yet, so we're not going to put any labels into our form today, but we are going to be just creating the inputs and everything, and then we'll put in the labels later. So what I'm going to do is create a little email and password box, and I know it's not really realistic, but I'm just going to create an email and password box with some placeholder text just to, work around with the inputs. So firstly, let's make 2 new lines. And as I said before, input tags are inline. So let's make a new p tag so that, and you should probably get used to this, is creating new p tags and putting them in sections. So we want the email and the password box to appear in the same line. So we're going to put both of the inputs inside this p tag. So first of all, let's make 2 new lines and use that little shortcut with the control key. Just hold control down and then you can type with multiple cursors at once. So I'm just going to type out input. And now we can go ahead. So now we have 2 inputs and we're going to create an email input. So email type and then a password input. There we go. And the name, we'll just put email and password or pass just to differentiate. And now let's create the placeholder text. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, the placeholder tag, I explained it. It's the gray text that goes inside the input. So I'm just going to put email here. And then, of course, it's pretty self-explanatory. And then password for this one, this password box. So now we have 2 inputs. Now, if we go ahead and actually open up our thing here, you can see that we have 2 boxes and they work perfectly. So there you go. And we have that header. And now let's move on. So now we're going to move on and create a survey question using the multiple choice, the multiple choice radio buttons. So first of all, let's create a new p tag. And actually, we're just going to make some text here. So I'm going to say, what is your favorite animal? So let's just make this bold with a strong tag. And I'm going to say, okay, what is your favorite animal? Animal. So there you go. And now we have our text. And again, we want our choices, our multiple choice radio buttons to appear on a new line. So make another p tag, and then now we can start typing out our inputs. So we have 3 different radio buttons. So we're going to use that control trick, and we're going to create 3 new inputs. And they're all going to be radio as well. And like I said before, they all have to have the same name. So if you want multiple choice radio buttons, you need to give them all the same name. So there you go. And now we'll just decide on a common name. Now, because it's what's your favorite animal, let's just make the name animal. And on top of that, let's give it an ID. And let's give it an ID of animal as well. So we're going to put a space and ID animal. There you go. And we don't really need any placeholder text because, it is a radio button. But now we have to do something that's different between all 3, that give them a value. So that when you're looking in the back end, you can differentiate between the choices. So let's just have dog, cat, and chicken. So I'm going to have 1 value for dog, 1 value for cat, and 1 value for chicken. So there you go, save it. And now if you refresh, you can see we have 3 radio button choices and we can choose between them. Now I know they don't say anything here, but don't worry about that because we will give them the labels later. So just ignore that for now. We'll give them the little labels later with the corresponding value. So now that we have our question here, why don't we create a submit button? Now there's a lot more to this form. We'll be building on it over time, but I'm just going to do very, very basics and then we'll move forward and actually improve this form as we go along. So I'll make a new p tag and then make an input with a submit type. So again, this submit tag, I know it's not going to appear probably, but you can see now our submit button here, it appears. So, and it's on a new line because it's in a p tag. So there you go. Now we have our submit and we'll just give it a name of submit. And then there you go. This is our very, very basic form. And I know it's not much to look at, but we will improve this in the future with drop downs and all sorts of stuff. So there you go. That's it. And we will be, like I said, we will be improving this over time. So that's really it. And please make sure that you download this file, or if you're coding along, make sure you save it because we will be working on it over time. Hi, welcome back. So in the previous video, we actually started creating our form and really forming it so that it looks like something, but we still have one major problem. We want the user to enter their password, but if you actually look here, let me just close that off. If you type something in and if I click submit, you can see it works perfectly. Even if I submit nothing, it would work perfectly. But what if we want this to be required so that when you click submit, it reminds you, no, you have to enter this. It's just one very simple attribute, required. You don't need anything in these quotation marks, no true, no disabled, just required. And if you type out required, you will see something very interesting. If I go ahead and refresh now and I submit without a password, you can see here that it asks me to fill out the field. And you see, even now, it'll say, there's still something wrong. You have to enter a proper email. And then see, there's no .com, but let me just fill that out. If I click submit now, you can see it works. So it's very simple. It's just one attribute required. Now, I want to require these little buttons here, these radio buttons. So what do? Type out required. It's so simple. It's actually deceptive. All you have to do is type out required and it will work perfectly. So that is the only thing you need to do to actually validate these inputs. And there you go. That's really it. So very quick, very short, but it is probably one of the most useful things when it comes to forms is validating them. Hi, welcome back. So now we're going to be covering drop-down menus. So if you want an idea of what a drop-down menu is, it's basically this little thing. You can click, you can select your options, and of course the first one will be disabled. So I'm going to be explaining to you how to do this step by step in this little form here, and then we're going to be applying it into our form that we've been working on the last 2 lessons. So this is how a basic drop-down menu would look. The tag to create a drop-down menu is select, right here. So think of this as a list. Now, basically, a list goes UL and LI. UL being the list creation tag, and then LI being the items inside the list. But instead of UL and LI, you have select and option. Option is the tag. Option is basically the LI tag for drop-down menus. So it's called option, and they do the exact same thing as LIs. They create items, you can put anything inside them, and this is just how it works. But you can see here there's a few attributes you need to use. So firstly, I'd like to cover value. Now, because each each item has a different, it's differentiated from one another. You need some sort of a value so that when the user inputs something, it doesn't just give you drop-down menu for every single option. So that's why in each option tag, you have to have a value, usually corresponding to what's inside the option tag. So if I go ahead here and I look at my list, you can see I have 3 options. And then I have this one option, but it's disabled. So the way to do that is by putting selected and disabled. No equals, no quotations, just selected, disabled. Now what this basically does, selected means upon refresh of the page or upon opening the web page, it is selected at first, and then disabled means that it cannot be selected as an option. So there you go. That's how to actually get that first option. And then you can set the value to whatever you want because there's no way that someone can actually input this. So that's actually just how to create or how a drop-down menu works. But why don't we go ahead and put it into our form right below the email and password. So I'm going to go and switch over to my form here. Now, instead of having birth year, I want birth month. So I'll have a little bit of differentiation so you can see what's going on. So firstly, create a new P tag to move this to a new line. And then we're going to create a select tag to actually start the drop-down menu. So there we go. Now we have our select tag. So we're going to have 3 months, January, February, and March. And that means we're going to have 4 option tags. 1 to identify that it's the birth month, and then 3 actual months. So we're going to create 1, 2, 3, 4 lines. We're going to go to the start. We're going to hold the control down, and we're going to select all 4 lines. And then we're going to create 4 option tags. So there you go. Now we have our option tags. So in these 3, I'm going to put January in order of how they will appear. So January, February, and March. I'm just going to put MAR. And then in the first one, I'm going to put birth month. I'm just going to put month, actually. So now we're going to give these 3 some values. So why don't we go ahead and do that? Value. and then we'll select each one, Jan, Feb, and Mar. So Jan, Feb, and Mar. Okay, there we go. Now we have our values. But what are we going to do about this one? If we go ahead and refresh, you can see it works. But let me just fill out some details here. And I'll select one. And you can see that we can select this month and it works. So that's where the selected disabled comes in. Right here, selected and disabled. There we go. And then we're going to set the value to 0. So this one is selected upon refresh, but it's disabled for selecting. Its value is 0. Actually, you can put anything here. It won't really matter, but you still need a value just in case. And then we have 3 items, each with its own value. Now, if we go ahead and refresh and we type in some details here, you can see that it works perfectly. We can't select this one. We'll just select a month, and then you can see it works perfectly. So there you go. That's really it for drop-down menus. It's a very useful tool, and you should really get the hang of it and get used to it before moving on and becoming a real expert in forms. Hi, welcome back. So we're going to be continuing on, and now we're going to be covering labels. So I've made references to labels and used them a lot in the past, but we've never really covered them in depth. So that's what I'm going to do today. So what labels are basically that's text that is appearing next to the input to sort of show what the input is. So I'll show you an example here. So you can see here I have an email. This is a label. This is the label. It's the email, and it's right next to the input. So it kind of indicates what the input is for, because you can see there's no placeholders here. So how can you tell which is which? So that's what labels are for. So there's 2 ways to actually put labels into inputs. The first way is by wrapping the input inside the label tag. So the input would come inside the label tag. So you can see here we have the email text right next to the label, and then the input. So if I wanted to show you what this really looked like, it would sort of look like this. You can see here, email, let me just move that back up. So there you go. You have label, label tag, email, and then you have the input here. So you can see here, the email sort of appears right next to the input. So I know it looks a little bit weird because I sort of nested it like this, but that's basically what it means. So you can see here, that's how it would look. But then there's a second way, and you don't actually have to input it. We don't have to actually wrap this around the input. And it's using this, the for attribute. So basically the way to do this is the label tag it's in its own line, but then the input tag is in its own line. The thing is, the name, ID, and the for attribute in the label tag, they all have to be the same. So you can see here, label for equals password box. The name and the ID in the input are also password box. So I prefer this way because it's just a lot cleaner, but there are some scenarios where you're going to have to use the first way, which I'll show you later. And especially with multiple choice radio tags, you're probably going to have to use this way. But why don't we actually start using them in our form? So firstly, I want to put some label tags for these 2 inputs. So what I'm going to do, as you can see, the name is email and the name is pass, but I'm going to need some IDs. So I'm going to make an ID for this one called pass, and let me just move that back. And I'm also going to make an ID for this one called email. So also make sure they match. And I'm just going to make a new line so we can really see what's going on. So firstly, let me do the email here. So I'll just make a new line. Now what I'm going to do is type out label, click tab, and now I'm just going to type the text in between that I want to appear. So I'm just going to type out email, and now right in the first label tag, for, and then look at the name and ID, make sure they match, and then type it out. Now if we go ahead and refresh on this form, you can see some text appears right here. So let's do the same thing for the password. I'm going to go right here, tab it, I'm going to go label, click tab, and then I'm going to type password. Look at the name and ID, it says pass, make sure they match, then go to the first label tag, for pass. Now let's refresh, and you can see we have our little thingy here, our little label. So I'm just going to do the same thing for the birth date as well. It's the same thing with drop-down menus, by the way. Right here, what I'm going to do, as you can see here, it's not an input, right? So how do we do this? Well, it's actually very simple. I'm just going to create another label tag right above, and then I'm just going to type birth month. So because it's not an input, there's no real special way. You don't really need to create an input. All you have to do is put the name and ID attributes inside the first select tag. So I'm just going to put month and ID is equal to month. So make sure you put this inside the select tag and not the options tags. So I'm just going to put for right there and then month. Now if we go ahead and refresh, you can see birth month comes up right there. But now here's the scenario I was talking about. The name and the ID have to be the same, right? But if you want to put 4, it won't really work the same because the labels will mess up and it will all look quite weird. Because, for example, if you put a label here for animal and then you type out cat, it will appear cat, cat, cat for all of them because they all have the same names and IDs. So this is where you would have to use the first method, which is nesting the input inside the label tags. So what I'm going to do is just create and copy and paste some label tags right there. So let's just make a new line in between each one. And also here. Okay, so I'm just going to create a label tag in between each input. And then you'll see what I'm going to do. So I'll just do that, / let's move that forward. Let's go there. And I know this is going to take a while and this is quite labor intensive, but this is the only way you can do it with multiple choice. Otherwise, it just won't work the same. So there we go. And now we have our labels. So now I'm going to look at the values I have here. So I'm going to have dog because my value is dog, cat, and then chicken. And there we go. So now if I refresh, you can see we have our labels and you can see each one is corresponding. So that's it for labels. So I demonstrated the 2 different ways, which scenarios you can use it in, and just overall a perspective on labels. So I hope you understand that now. I'm going to leave this full file for download and the others so you can actually see how the form works and you can experiment around with it and then just really get a feel for it before the forms project and the quiz. Hi, welcome back. So I hope you enjoyed that little forms quiz and I hope you did really well on it. And now it's time for another project and probably the final section project before the final section. So here we have a little game register here. So you can see we have some labels, we have some email, password, and then you have a skill level with beginner, intermediate, and advanced. Then we have a survey question with multiple choice radio. And then we have a checkbox agree to the service terms and conditions. So all of these fields are required. And this is an H1, by the way. So all you have to do is go ahead and copy everything. Just look at this and just try and replicate it in Sublime and make your own file. And then once you're done, as usual, you can download the solution. So good luck. Hi, welcome back. So I hope you enjoyed that final exam that you just did, covering everything, and I really hope that you did well. So we have come to the end of the series, unfortunately, and hopefully you know enough skills to propel you forward into the world of web development. So just as a final project, as a final goodbye, I have prepared this project using all of the skills that we have learned in this section. So let me just run you through. This is a header 1. This is a header 4, and this is an image. It's included in the solution file, which you're going to have to download. I'll talk about that later. Here is some styled text, a link tag, and then a bullet pointed list. And then this is a table, and the width and height of the table is 150 pixels. And then here at the bottom, we just have a form, email, password, a skill level with beginner, intermediate, and advanced, and then a multiple choice radio buttons with a submit. So let me just continue. Let me just refresh the page. So because this is too much to see in one screenshot of this video, you're going to have to download the solution. And what you're just going to do is take the image from that solution file, open up the HTML file, just look at everything and try and replicate it on your own. Once you're done, you can open up the solution and then see if everything checks out. So there you go. This is the file. And I really hope that you do well. So this is everything that we have learned in this course: forms, tables, lists, text creation and styling, and of course, just everything else that we have learned in general. So, good luck.